So, as the introduction said, my name is Daniel Diaz. I'm the Executive Director of Citizens for Sound Money and our 501c3 foundation, which is the Sound Money Movement. I want to tell you what I'm going to say, and then I'm going to repeat it in my speech. I got 5 points for those note takers. First, I'm going to discuss why sound money. Second, what is the problem? Third, what is the solution? Fourth, how do we bring sound money back? And then 5, who is fighting for the sound money movement? A little bit about my background. Jim Forsyth, he said that my background really said a lot about why I do what I do. So I want to tell you about who I am and why I'm in this fight. So I'm a first-generation Cuban American. My family fled Cuba in 1965. And the reason for that, well, one, it was communism. But I guess the straw that broke the camel's back for my family was when my grandfather paid some extra money to the butcher to get some extra meat. In every communist nation, I don't know if you know this, there is a communist informant on every floor and every street. And if they see something that's breaking the party's rules, they report it, and then they come arrest you. Well, they found out my grandfather paid for extra meat, breaking the ration rules. They threw him in jail. The minute he was released, he says, "We need to leave." They packed up, got to the airport, and they literally confiscated everything except for the clothes on their back. If we didn't have family and friends in Miami, my family would have been on the streets. But thank God my grandfather had a career. He had a construction business. They were landlords in Cuba. And he immediately got a job pouring cement in Miami. This was in 1965. My family would tell me that to make extra money, they go buy pies, cut it up, sell it for a nickel or a dime to make extra money. So from 1965 to 1980, my grandfather worked through the construction company, eventually buying that company, selling that company in the 80s, and leaving my family an inheritance. So I'm extremely grateful for the opportunities that America has provided my family and all the immigrants that have come to this country to fulfill their American dream. And with that, I was told as a Cuban, one, I was born a conservative before I was out of the womb, right? You can't be a liberal as a Cuban that came from Cuba, right? Communism is evil. And we equate Democrats to communism. No offense to any Democrats in the room. So I dedicated my life at the age of 16 to prevent what happened in my family's country from happening to my country. So since the age of 16, I have been a political activist fighting the left every step of the way. In 2010, I became the National Executive Director of Young Americans for Freedom. I eventually went into school, became an insurance agent, a stockbroker, and then in 2020, I'm really going through my history quick to give you more of a background, my financial background. In 2020, I started learning about Bitcoin and blockchain technology specifically. I wasn't too impressed with the cryptocurrencies. I was extremely impressed with blockchain technology and the fact that you can transfer ownership through the digital signatures, and you can actually own it and transact with it. And that is what I identified as the foundation of liberty in the future in a local economy, the modern economy. So I was anti-Bitcoiner, became a pro-Bitcoiner in October of 2020. Within 2 months, I was crypto mining. By January 2021, I started a crypto mining company and blockchain consulting company. So that was my exodus from traditional fiat, evil financial services into modern sound money. Now, during that time, I learned about gold and silver and NFTs and how you can back NFTs with digital gold and silver like Tether Gold or PaxG. And that's how I came across Citizens for Sound Money. I wanted to create a non-security NFT project that will pay you a yield, but the only way you can earn that yield is by learning financial literacy and sound money principles. So the idea was you learn about sound money principles each month, you take a quiz. Once you pass that quiz, you get a deposit of digital gold and Bitcoin. And I needed an education partner. I knew plenty about crypto. I didn't know anything about gold and silver, and that's where I found Jim and Marion Ward. And they interviewed me, and because of my political background, and shortly after my interview, they told me about this Texas bill that was trying to make electronic gold and silver legal tender. I'm like, hey, I used to work in Texas, in Austin. I got some contacts. Let me put them to work. I put them to work. They were impressed with my political background, and they made me the National Legislative Director. 5 months later, they asked me to become the National Executive Director of Citizens for Sound Money. So that is my background. The next question is, why sound money? What is our most important resource? Anybody? Time. We can't get any more of it, and as we spend it, that's it, right? And how do I describe our time? I describe our time as economic energy. Whether you're thinking, whether you're praying, whether you're working, you're exerting your economic energy, and where you put that energy is the wealth you're building. If you're a nun or a monk, you're building your economic energy in heaven. If you're an entrepreneur like Silver Dave, you're building physical wealth. If you're a thinker, you're putting your economic energy in your brain into thought, think tanks, so forth. And where you spend your money, where you spend your economic energy is how you grow your wealth. And now, what is the problem? Why sound money? Well, the problem is 78% of Americans today live paycheck to paycheck. Statistically, 4 out of 5 people in this room are broke. I think it's a little skewed. We're libertarians. We're probably not in that situation, probably a little less. But overall, Americans are struggling. And I want to give some examples because I've traveled the entire country. Eric, can you move out of the way? Thank you. All right, cool. Thank you. I've traveled the country lobbying for gold and silver legislation. And in Missouri, we had just got it through the Senate. I was meeting with the chief of staff of a Democratic senator, and we left after discussing it at a restaurant. I called an Uber. The Uber drove by. I noticed that the driver was a little older, so I called the driver, and she came back. And I got in. I'm like, wow, she is quite old. I'm like, ma'am, do you mind if I ask how old you are? She told me I'm 78 years old. I'm like, why are you driving Uber? She's like, why did you come out of retirement? She's like, well, I'm a widow. My husband's Social Security, my Social Security, and our pensions don't pay me enough to eat. I have to drive so that I can eat. Uber pays for this brand new Escalade and pays me so I can actually sustain myself. I was heartbroken. Here in New Hampshire, last year I stayed in a different hotel, and I was talking to the manager why we were here pushing sound money legislation, and she told me she was working 3 jobs because she cannot survive. And then recently in Florida, I went to a church where people in the church want to get involved in government, and we were just praying. I was talking about the economic struggles of Americans and told the stories, and this old lady next to me was writing something after we prayed and we started talking about something else. I thought she was taking notes. She slid it across to me. She's like, my name is Beth. I'm a 94-year-old woman, and I'm out spending my money. Please tell people about me next time you talk. This is the story of 78% of Americans across the country. Their wealth, our wealth is being stolen from us if we're not in sound money. And an example of the dollar's lost 98% of its purchasing power since 1971. To give an example, $20 about 110 years ago could buy you a top hat, tuxedo, shirt, pocket watch, shoes, chocolates, and flowers for your date. Today, what can $20 get you? Maybe a decent pizza, right? But what can an ounce of gold get you at $3,310? Well, if I wanted to, I could go back and buy that top hat, tuxedo, shirt, pocket watch, shoes, chocolates, and flowers for my date and probably have some left over. Because gold and silver is money. When you exert your economic energy and you put your wage into something, you put it into gold and silver because it will preserve it. And when you put it into the dollar, it is stealing your time. Time we need to preserve, and that is our number one asset. And where's the best place to preserve it? Not grow it. Bitcoin's fantastic. Other assets are great at growing it. The best asset to put your economic energy is gold and silver, hands down. And what is money, right? There's a lot of people that say Bitcoin is money. And I want to define it. There's 3 characteristics of money that most economists agree we can define. The first characteristic, it's a medium of exchange. Anything can be a medium of exchange, right? Shoes, socks, dollars, gold. The second is a unit or account. 2 socks, 100 pennies, $100, half of Bitcoin. The third thing is what differentiates money from currency. And all fiat currency is just that, because it's not a store of value. Currency is where you put your economic energy to be stolen by the central banks and the government. Money is where you put it to preserve your wealth so you can keep up with the theft, right? And then to expand it further to cut out Bitcoin, because I don't think Bitcoin's money, and no offense to the Bitcoin maxis. I used to be one, now I'm a soft Bitcoin maxi. There's 5 more characteristics. It's portable, durable, divisible, fungible. And you Bitcoiners are like, oh, Bitcoin's all that, where it's not stable. Bitcoin's not stable. Money has to be stable. Yeah, gold and silver fluctuate, but within a very tight range. We don't see 80% drops in gold and silver, right? Well, maybe silver sometimes, but not 80%. We might see a 20, 30% drop in silver. But that is what I define. Those 8 characteristics, for those that are taking notes: medium of exchange, unit of account, store of value, portable, durable, divisible, fungible, and stable. And now the next part of my talk is, how do we bring the solution back? How do we bring sound money back? And that's where Citizens for Sound Money comes in. We're fighting state by state, trying to make real money legal tender again, right? And you might ask, well, why do we need to make it legal tender? Well, look, New Hampshire is great. You have great laws, even barter laws. But the difference is when you're bartering gold and silver, it's considered property at that point, and you have to pay taxes on that property. You make it legal tender, it's now money. It's a different legal protections, right? With barter, there's civil protections. Well, with money, you actually have all the laws protecting you. And the same thing in Florida. Florida's great. We're number 2 behind New Hampshire. Hopefully we beat you guys eventually. But our barter laws are horrible, and that's why we're pushing so hard for legal tender. Plus, it's constitutional. Our founding fathers hated paper money. They experimented with that during the Continental Congress to pay for the war. And Benjamin Franklin thought, oh, I have this cool printing press. Let me just get some leaf patterns and for counterfeiting, and let me just print as much Continental dollars and say it's backed by gold and silver. Well, the problem was they kept printing more Continental dollars, and there wasn't enough gold and silver to redeem it. And that's where the term "it ain't worth a Continental" came from, because you couldn't buy shoes for the army at that time. And our founding fathers so hated paper money, they put it in the Constitution that only gold and silver, and they put 426 grains for an ounce. It was money. The one president, who knows the president that destroyed our monetary system? No, further back. No, Ulysses S. Grant. There's a Supreme Court case where they brought this question of, can paper money be money, legal tender? The Supreme Court said no, only gold and silver is money in America. Well, what did Ulysses S. Grant do? He took something from the future, and he was the first one that really started. He stacked the courts. He added a couple more Supreme Court justices to overturn that ruling to make greenbacks legal tender. Ulysses S. Grant destroyed our constitutional money by stacking the courts. And then the rest is history. Then we have Andrew Jackson going to war with the banks and so forth. So let me see, sound money legislation. So I want to talk about what we've been doing. We have been going across the country, either me physically going and testifying and working with legislators and make gold and silver legal tender, or making phone calls or testifying online. And the fight has been unbelievable. Look, I've been lobbying since 16, but it's mostly been ideological or Christian issues. It's a lot easier to lobby for ideology or faith. It's very difficult when you get into money, because you have a lot of special interests, and there's a lot of corruption when it comes into the financial sector. And it has been an uphill battle. And what I can summarize is that if you want to get sound money legislation, and it's unfortunate this is the state of America, we're a corporatocracy. We're not a republic, we're not a democracy. We're a corporatocracy because if you have the money, you make the rules. And that's what's happening. The corporations are paying off leadership. 3 people: the governor, the Speaker of the House, and the Senate President, and every single legislator. Some more, some less. But there's corruption there. And that has been the #1 hurdle of trying to make constitutional money again. And 5 minutes, I'm going to wrap this up, and then we can take some questions. Citizens for Sound Money is fighting hard. We got it through the House in Florida. We're waiting to see what happens in the Senate. Missouri, they're moving it along. Texas has a bill. We're also monitoring legislation that might be vendor-specific, and we're fighting against that. It's an uphill battle, but the mission is so important because gold and silver is freedom. Because we put our economic energy into it, and we can actually spend it and not worry about our money, our economic energy being stolen. So I'm just going to say this, and then I can open up for question and answer. I wish this was a 1-hour talk. I mean, I can talk about this so much more. I'd love to talk to any of you about this at the author table, even though I don't have a book. But I will be selling gold backs at over a 10% discount Nothing against silver date, but I love gold backs. It's convertible for U.S. minted coinage, which there's a lot of tax implications. But if you want to support our organization, go to citizensforsoundmoney.org or buy some gold backs, because gold backs donates 400 gold backs a month for our mission. So if any money that any Federal Reserve notes that you use to buy gold backs for real money is going to go towards our mission to finance our lobbying efforts. So I'll open it up for any questions. Good afternoon.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I enjoyed your presentation. You said that gold and silver have fluctuated.
Yes.
In terms of what?
In terms of Federal Reserve notes, gold and silver.
Exactly.
Solid.
Gold and silver did not fluctuate.
The
The Federal
dollar did.
Reserve notes did.
Correct. Thanks for that correction. I will proudly take that.
One of the challenges with gold and silver as money is its usability, and you point out how, with more recent technology, they can be tokenized and whatnot, which helps a little bit with the usability, but introduces a problem of counterparty risk, because now you have this central issuer who has to secure the metals in some kind of facility, and maybe it's fractional, maybe it gets seized by the government like they did with e-gold and so on. Why not have purely digital cryptocurrency, Bitcoin-backed synthetics that are pegged to the value of some more stable asset, whether it's gold or silver or a basket of things or something like that?
Well, the synthetic stuff didn't really work that well. Look at Luna, right? Terra
Well,
Luna.
I mean more like, so there are Bitcoin-backed stable coins like Dollar on Chain or Sovereign Dollar that have held their peg over time because they're slightly over-collateralized, whereas UST, like your reference, was under-collateralized. So because they're fundamentally over-collateralized, they hold their value.
Yeah. My question would be, what are they over-collateralized with? Typically, it's Treasury Reserve notes or more Bitcoin. To me, Bitcoin isn't money because it fluctuates. You can't have an 85-year-old or 75 or 95-year-old lady putting her paycheck into Bitcoin and it lose 30, 40%. She won't be able to eat.
Well, it's not theoretical. Look at the value of Sovereign Dollar, Dollar on Chain. They've held their peg for, in some cases, over 5 years now.
Yeah, my rebut to that is that gold and silver has been money since written history has been happening, right? We have used it in every empire, every nation, every local mint, even during the early stages of our country. The U.S. mint couldn't mint enough, so they would mint bronze or copper, gold, and silver. Gold and silver is money. Fiat currency is an experiment, and I love cryptocurrency because of the blockchain technology. Now, if we can peg blockchain technology to gold and silver, which there are many companies that do that now, that are audited at least every 6 months by some of the largest auditing firms in the world, like Kinesis, or there's a few companies, Glint as well. There's a handful of companies right now that operate on the blockchain space and not on the blockchain space that are audited, and there is a private incentive not to screw the people because you go to jail. The government can screw us, and there's nothing that's going to happen. So, look, there's always going to be third-party risk when you're dealing with real money because it's a physical asset. Yeah.
Putting aside the existence of the Federal Reserve, why was it problematic for Grant to say greenbacks are money? Because wouldn't we say more money is better because more competition of different things, and therefore wouldn't there have been a reason why people started to use greenbacks instead of gold and silver?
The greenback was there really just to pay for the war. They didn't have enough gold and silver. There was also problems internationally with when the government controls the pegging, which I'm completely against. It should be free floating. So there's always been battles between Great Britain and France, changing the ratio gold and silver to pull gold and silver out of that nation. That's what happened in America during that time. That people were sending our gold and silver overseas, so we didn't have enough. Thank God for the 49ers that found a bunch of gold and silver, and we just created the Morgan Dollar project because we wanted to create something to help the silver industry. But I think does that answer your question? Okay, all right. All right, thank you very much.